Week 36 has brought us quite a few news. The key interest rate was cut by 1%. A Russian Orthodox Church made splashes again. Russian government created new laws. But the biggest news by far, the one that towers over other news, is Russian drones hit Poland. That is big, that is serious, and has very big implications. Those news and others too, welcome to today's Crazy Friday News Update. Howdy, friends. My name is Konstantin. Welcome to Inside Russia, where usual Russia is explained by the unusual Russian. Welcome to Fridays. I give you crazy news updates straight out of the mad circus that Russia has unfortunately become. But first things first. There is no such absurdity that cannot be realized in Russia these days. Please don't forget that. And the news, I call them crazy news from Russia, the news of Russia that matter and that you, most of which you will not find in any mainstream media. And some you will find because, some news are so big, everyone covers them. Well, I'd like to jump straight to the news, and as you know, if you watch my news updates, I start with positive news, always, because positive news are good. They give us a smile. They set the mood for the rest of the live stream. So I give you another positive news. Actually, I continue the good news from last week, from 7 days ago. I showed you a law, and I told you about the law that protects pigeons in Russia. Yes, from now on, the drivers who hit pigeons might go to prison for 2 years. Well, they're hit by a hefty fine, and then if they hit an individual pigeon, and if they hit a flock of pigeons, up to 2 years in prison. And the odd thing was that it was just about pigeons. No other birds are protected by new Russian law, just pigeons. Why? That was an open question last week. But then I got an answer. Of course. Russian government cares and protects pigeons, doves, so much because very soon it'll start using the dove male again. There you go. Very positive news. Another news is, this next piece of news is not positive. It's alarming. It's crazy. I don't even know how to categorize it, okay? I guess it's pretty daunting for the rest of the world, and it's kind of odd for Russians. Russian senator, vice speaker of Russian parliament, lower chamber, Irina Yarovaya, made a very odd statement this past week, and I want you to listen to it. Russian language as a language of dialogue and friendship has a great potential because Russian language has not only words, as other languages do, but on top of that, Russian language has deep moral, emotional meaning. Now, in case it hasn't sunk in, that is once more, I'll repeat it once again. Russian language as language of dialogue and friendship has great potential because Russian language has not only words, as other languages do, but on top of that, Russian language has deep moral, emotional meaning. When I heard Irina Yarovaya say that, my head kind of started spinning. I sometimes feel very alone and insane. That's true. I call my Friday news reports crazy news from Russia. But perhaps those news in Russia are normal. Perhaps they're not crazy. Perhaps it's me who's crazy. Let me explain. In my world, according to my values, in one hand, you have peace and friendship, and in the other hand, you have missiles, bombs, and tanks. In my world, these things are mutually exclusive. You cannot be peaceful and nice in dialogue with those who you send missiles to kill them. Russian is the language of dialogue and peace? Tell that to the indigenous people of Siberia. Tell that to Poles, to the Finns, to the Czech, to the Germans, to the Slovaks, to the Hungarians, to Uzbeks. Tell it to the Ukrainians. Tell that Russian language is the language of dialogue and peace to the Europeans and the Americans, as they have been threatened so many times by Russian officials of the highest level to wipe them off the face of the earth with nuclear missiles. In Russian language, that happened. To talk of friendship and dialogue when you hit another country with missiles at the same time is insanity. Now, if we listen Yarovaya till the end, at the second part, we get this. From this point on, I want you to understand what she says. Russian language has not only words, as other languages do, but on top of that, Russian language has deep moral, emotional meaning or meanings. Well, Russian is spoken by 2% of people on Earth. The remaining 98%, according to Yarovaya, are emotionally and morally defective. I am Russian, born and raised. Russian is my native tongue. I've always thought of Russia as of Russian language as of just another language out there. Let's say English. I'm speaking English right now. I take words, English words, and I put them together. They create meanings, and I share these meanings with you right now. I am full of emotions right now. I'm full of anger and shame, by the way. I'm full of emotions, and I have no problem communicating them to you, to the listeners, and I think you understand me very well. But according to Irina Yarovaya, it's only Russian language that has deep moral, emotional meanings. Now, that's not some small potatoes Russian, Ivan speaking, saying that. That's the deputy speaker of Russian parliament, Irina Yarovaya. She's responsible for many laws, including the Foreign Agent for Companies law, including for the safety of information, were allowed the Russian state to collect all the information, telephone talks, and internet data of all Russian citizens. She is the big deal. What she said today, well, this past week, is totally, completely against how I see things. Do you know what I really find insane? The world is buying what Yarovaya is saying. The world is buying it as normal. The Russians are buying it without any second thought. They believe her. The Uzbeks, the Kazakhs, Armenians perhaps are buying it. They don't say anything. And the rest of the world is silent. The rest of the world finds it okay. It means one thing. It's not the Russian news that are crazy. You know, it's me. It's me that who is crazy. Oh boy, do I feel alone and confused sometimes? Better believe it. Friends, now tell me, are you with me? Or do you also think I'm crazy? Please let me know. Really interesting, because my head is kind of spinning right now, you know? I keep on remembering that song by Bob Seger, Against the Wind, an old one. Against the wind, I'm still running against the wind. I'm older now, but still running against the wind. That's how I'm feeling, and that wind is like a tornado spinning around me. Oh boy. Another piece of news is largely overlooked by everyone in Russia. I find it revealing news. I want to show you something. Last year, a Russian aerospace company announced that it's going to create the killer of Starlink, American Starlink. The company called airspace decided to build a Starlink killer. Well, obviously, Russia needs its own space internet. Obviously, there are shortages in Russia. They're banning regular mobile internet all over Russia as I speak, but they need space internet. They don't have enough of this ground internet that worked perfectly well, by the way, for 2 decades, I'd say. No, they need to send something to space. So SR Space promised to launch 521 spaceships by 2030 and to kill Starlink. I love the number, by the way, 521. Why 521? Why not 500? Or why not 550, 600? No, it had to be 521. You know what? I think that 521 and a half spaceships would sound even better. But hey, what do I know? Of course. Well, SR Space decided to raise money in a very unusual way. By the way, it only needed $1.5 billion rubles, equivalent of $20 million. Well, obviously, in Russia, it's enough to send hundreds of spaceships, satellites to space, to link them all together with a very sophisticated cutting-edge software, to create that software first, to hire thousands of engineers, software engineers, and real engineers with, computers and drafts. All that stuff in Russia is cheap, a dime a dozen. Come to Russia, get, 100 engineers for $10. So that company only needed $20 million to kill Starlink. I wonder if anyone can tell to Elon Musk that he spent billions, hundreds of billions pumping into his Starlink system. Hey, come to Russia, you can get stuff up and running for $20 million. That's it. All right. In July 2024, SR Space started the fundraising in a pre-IPO, whatever it is. I've never heard of a pre-IPO before. Pre-IPO fundraising, and then comes IPO. IPO, I know what it is. Initial public offering. I actually was preparing IPO for one of our companies a long time ago, but pre-IPO, I don't know. sometimes they have a procedure called the roadshow, but they never raise money. They just raise awareness. But in Russia, pre-IPO is you got to raise money, that $20 million. And $1.5 billion rubles, $20 million, was raised, obviously, pre-IPO. Well, fast forward to August 26, 2025. And look at this. SR Space declared bankrupt. Court in Moscow declared Russian SR Space, which was promised to be a killer of Starlink, bankrupt. Well, that's the news. Where did investors' $20 million go in 9 months? Did the Starlink building 521 spacecraft even begin? Perhaps they built something. Perhaps they built half of them. 250, 260 and a half, perhaps. No, they haven't built anything. They haven't done anything. Because they are a Russian company. They can't do anything well. They can blah, 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 blah about exceptionalism of Russian language and superiority of Russian values, of superiority of Russian church and how all Russians are so much more spiritual than others. They can talk about this Russian language stuff with, unlike other languages, with so much meaning and so much of a... They can talk about that perfectly well. They're professionals. But when it comes to actually doing things that matter, that make people's lives better, that benefit society, there's not much they can do. They can steal, though. They're the best at stealing from their own. What about those $20 million you raised last year, SR Space? Where did they go? Are they still in Russia on your bank accounts? Are they going to be paid back to the investors? Or perhaps already in Miami, in nice condos, or in Dubai, or in Nice, or in London? Oh yeah, they're very good at that. Speaking of internet in Russia, of course, they need space internet, Starlink killer, The authorities have started advertising and promoting mobile internet outages. Now, I kid you not, when I returned to Russia back in 2004, it was a great time. Markets were growing, technologies were being implemented, infrastructure was being built. I remember how the mobile operators were advertising their mobile internet faster, more bandwidth, cheaper, gigabytes more, get free phone with the internet plan, that type of thing. Use the internet. That's what they were saying. Completely different situation now. A complete U-turn. Now, this is Vladimir province. It's not too far from Moscow. It's a medium-sized Russian province. And this is the major TV channel, primetime news program called Vesti. I want you to check it out. They downplay their responsibility, saying that mobile internet outages are necessary action to protect the locals from the drone attacks and generally increase the security. Not too long ago, the local residents were always on their cell phones, always surfing, always looking. Now look at them. They're without cell phones, they're walking around, they're having a good time. So there are some difficulties. It's really difficult to access online bank. It's difficult to watch the news online, to pay by QR code. But then they interview people. Oh, it was so great. We We spend so much more time with each other. We don't stare at our phones. No, we read books, we walk around. You know, free of stress. We're not. Oh, when the locals can use regular services without mobile internet. Yes, now they can pay by QR code without internet. Look at those people. They're working without phones. New technology. Well, not Russian, but hey, it works not through internet, but through radio waves. I think it's called Bluetooth, but what do I know? And the government cares for you. That the Wi-Fi points are shown, free Wi-Fi points. Of course, you have to give your personal information, passport ID and all of that. But look, the government cares about you. It gives you, throughout the city, it gives you a dozen or so Wi-Fi points where you can come and check your mail and check your services. Oh, I'm sorry, 233 Wi-Fi access points. I'm sorry, throughout the province, not just the capital. Throughout the entire province, 233 points, courtesy of Russian government. Wow, just wow. As I said, I was witnessing the rise of Russia. Things were going well. The companies were competing, giving people more internet, cheaper internet, faster internet. And now, it's incredible. They downplay their responsibility, government's responsibility, saying that mobile internet outages are necessary action to protect the locals. But then at the same time, they downplay, how do I say that? Not obstacles, but not having internet that you pay for, by the way, mobile internet. Not having it is like, imagine yourself, to me, it'd be a catastrophe if I'm away from my home, from my office, and I can't work. I work all the time using my television. That's what I pay for. Now, they show how wonderful it is to live without internet, and that's what the advertising is. It's hidden inside the messages. They show happy people how they are interviewed and say that, oh, that's great. That's great. All of a sudden, there's so much more time to talk to our loved ones, to spend the time with our loved ones, to meet friends, to do other important things like walk and read books. Instead of saying directly, hey, listen up, people, we screwed up, and now you have to suffer because of our decisions, because of Putin's decision, okay, because of the war. They brainwash Russians into believing that life without mobile internet is blessing. I think that Russian propaganda isn't doing its best, though. I think they could do more. They should also start brainwashing Russians to the idea that cars are bad, unhealthy. There's so much pollution created. It's so much better to use horses rather than cars. Horses are animals and they bring emotions in people when you interact with them. And cars are just dead pieces of metal and plastic junk. Horses don't break. Cars break all the time, especially the Chinese ones. Horses can feed off the grass in parks. You don't have to do anything. You are free. And the cars, they need gas. And gas, there are some problems about that, but we won't tell you about that, Cars are fast and dangerous. And horses are slow and absolutely safe. Huh? What do you think of that idea? I should pitch it to Russian propaganda. And those people are talking of Starlink killer. Really? I mean, really? It's incredible. Okay. The next piece of news. It comes from the peacemaking head of Chechen Republic of Russia, Ramzan Kadyrov. Oh, the guy we have heard a lot. Well, it's actually the latest news didn't come from him directly, but from his Telegram channel. And there's a big difference in that. This is the what he wrote in the Telegram channel, and it kind of shows about how peaceful Russia is. I quote, "Peace on our borders is possible only when Ukraine becomes a region or district of Russia," unquote. Ramzan Kadyrov believes that Ukraine should become a region of Russia, and the war cannot be stopped now, as it is not beneficial to Russia. Plain and simple. Hey, all of you stupid, asking for ceasefire, for peace agreement, this is simply not beneficial to us, that's all. So, it cannot be stopped. Those of you out there asking for how long the war will be going on for, why doesn't Putin like to sign ceasefire agreement right now, peace agreement, why doesn't Putin want to meet the Ukrainian president and so forth? The answer is simple. It is simply not beneficial to Russia. And I think Kadyrov is right. Well, he should have said it's simply not beneficial to Putin. Okay, I think it'd be more correct. So much for ceasefire and peacemaking. The next piece of news comes from Chukotka. It's a far northern region of Russia. It's right next to Alaska. It's that area of Russia that is adjacent to the USA. A medical scientist, Viktor Zuyev, is a medical doctor as well, admitted alarmingly that there is fast spread of HIV in Chukotka. That's the region where most indigenous people live. Now, Zuyev also named the reasons for HIV spread in Chukotka, and I think there's a solution too, but that solution comes from me, not from Zuyev. I admire Zuyev's ability to identify the problem and give the reason. I mean, tens of thousands of scientists study HIV and how it's spreading, but Zuyev finds a reason just like that. I like that. I'm going to tell you just in a couple seconds. Earlier, it became known that Chukotka has the highest HIV incidence in Russia. According to the statistics, per 100,000 people in Chukotka, there are 79.1 people with confirmed HIV. According to the good doctor, when assessing the epidemiological situation, data on traveling should be taken into account. Yes, the scientist named the possible reasons for the spread of the HIV. I quote the good doctor, "Chukotka seems to be far from Moscow, and suddenly such a story. Now, people travel abroad in millions. We need to look at how many visitors there are in Chukotka, pay attention to human movement. Globalization can be the cause of the spread of the disease. The globalization," unquote. It's globalization and international traveling. The locals go abroad, the tourists from the satanic West come visit and bring their dirty disease, HIV, right into Chukotka. You see, everything was well before internet came along, before internet penetrated, this foreign values, the freedom and the access to information. It penetrated Chukotka like plague. And Mobile telephones also landed in Chukotka, and cars, oh my god. And then Chukotkins started getting ideas. Of course, they look at the internet and they see all kinds of stuff there. They started vacationing abroad. Oh my gosh. They started seeing things, you know. Well, you know what? Have hope, Chukotkins. I, Konstantin, have a solution for you. To forget of the HIV and about all the diseases once and for all. Chukotka will be disease-free. All you need to do is to ban traveling outside Russia and within Russia, basically to ban traveling out of Chukotka. You need to ban internet in Chukotka completely and cars, and it'll do it. Yeah, and get the shamans too. That all will fix all your problems, not even HIV, everything else. Yeah. And the modern medical Russian doctors, oh, they're so good at identifying the true cause of the HIV spread. The people in Atlanta and CDC, they should take a notice. Perhaps they don't know how the HIV spreads. It's through globalization. Yeah. It shows current level of Russian healthcare and what kind of professionals are employed in healthcare, by the way. Now, before moving to the next news, I would like to take this opportunity and thank you for being a part of Inside Russia community, for watching my videos, for sending me messages, liking, subscribing. If you haven't liked this message, that'd be a good time to do it, by the way. Thank you. So thank you very much for sending your love, for praying along with me, for buying me coffees at buymecoffee.com, for Patreon, for PayPal. Your support shows me that you value my work highly. Just know that inspires me and gives me energy to move forward. And it's not easy sometimes because I'm running against the wind, against the Russian state, against Russian secret police KGB, and against Google. Google demonetized me over a year ago without good explanation or reasons, and I'm not earning anything from this channel over a year now from Google. So, but despite that, I give you a promise that I will continue moving forward because you inspire me, you support me, and you give me reason to go forward. Thank you so much. Now back to the news. The next piece of information, well, it's not really news, but I ran into this piece of information and I loved it. I found it fascinating and I figured I wanted to share it with you. Can you guess who it is in the video? This is 1989, Moscow, one of our schools in Moscow.
Did you do the homework? What? Physics. Yeah, I did it. Let me take a look, okay? I need it.
The USSR, 1989. I don't know, perhaps some of you might recognize this fella. A brilliant young teacher. The teacher of physics, mathematics, and astronomy at school number 27 in Moscow. Great teacher, great guy, fantastic person. The colleagues loved him, the students adored him.
Physics is definitely not my favorite, but, well, he's pretty good. He cracks a lot of corny jokes. A lot looser than most teachers.
That's the students are commenting on their teacher. Oh my gosh, don't you recognize that voice? Don't you recognize that voice? Voice hasn't changed. The way the guy looks changed a bit, but you know, he's older now, but the voice, it's the same. Now, that's another video. I pulled it up specifically for you, okay? This guy turned out to be a reporter, a journalist. Back in late 90s, he worked on Russian TV, and he was one good journalist. Very fair, very honest. And I'm not being sarcastic here. He's a good guy. Very public. Here he is criticizing Putin. He's criticizing the system of elections in Russia. He's naming Putin and criticizing him. Says he's disgusted with Putin. Putin speaks like one of us, is a good speaker and all of that. And then this guy starts picking Putin apart, so to speak. The guy he's talking to is Grigory Yavlinsky, the long leader of the Apple political party. Now he's retired, but he was a politician in Russia for 30 years. Anyway. Very good journalist. Have you recognized this guy? The biggest, the strongest, the most recognized face of Russian propaganda. Number one person in Russian propaganda. Vladimir Solovyov, of course. This is the current day video. This is the current day Solovyov. Check it out. The evening with Vladimir Solovyov, the prime time. Russian propaganda at its best. Look, he's dressed like Stalin. Look at him. He's acting like Stalin. My gosh.
Did you do the homework? What? Physics. Yeah, I did it. Let me take a look, okay? I need it.
What a difference. What a difference. Solovyov, by the way, lived in the USA and worked in the USA and the East Coast for 2 years. He loved the USA. Then he returned to Russia. I was looking at this footage, these films, and I was thinking, how do people transform like that? How they go from the good to the evil? What motivates them to sell their souls to the devil? Money? Power? What a story of magnificent demise of a good person, and at the same time a story of a great career of perhaps world's biggest, the world's biggest one was Goebbels, in Germany, in Nazi Germany. Perhaps world's second biggest propagandist of all time. Magnificent and very evil. The next piece of news, well, how do I present it to you? Now, Russians were urged not to worry about the reduction in the number of spots for students at universities. I don't know what category to put this news into. The Minister of Education, Sergei Kravtsov, explained that Russia needs not only university graduates, but also specialists with secondary vocational education. He noted that the balanced difference in world practice. In some countries, about half of high school graduates go to universities, and others, fewer students go to the universities. And in the USSR, only 25% of school children received higher education. And this was not perceived as a problem. Limiting access to education, Russians getting dumber in the future, Russians getting less educated, not a problem. Not a problem. That's what the good minister says. Don't worry. No universities for you, no internet, perhaps no cars in the future. But you will have so much more time to hang out with your friends, and drink vodka. Think of that time you could waste going to the lectures and learning new things about, how economy works, physics, mathematics. It's headache. That stuff gives you headaches as the Minister of Education. Now that drink vodka. You have so much more time. I personally am not worried about Russians getting less educated. Are you worried? Because I'm not. I have no problem here. So I take the advice of the minister. I'm not worried. Whatever, they can do whatever. And I have a new slogan for Putin's Russia. Don't worry, be happy. The new piece of... This is crazy. They are crazy news, They are. Obviously, I prepared this news. It's not the first time I've even rehearsed before. Some of them, not all, but some of them. And I rehearse this one every time. I laugh. and I can't stop laughing about that. Don't worry. Don't worry, be happy. You're less educated now. You're going to be less. Your kids, it's not about people, it's about their children. Oh, your kids will not go to universities? Who cares? Don't worry. No worries. No problem. Don't consider it as a problem. No, we will not. My son will get higher education. All my people have gotten, are getting, or will get higher education. That's my personal choice as of Constantine. Okay, but Russians, I'm not worried about them. The next piece of news comes from Russian church. Again, it's really difficult to nail what kind of news is that. That the church has been the newsmaker since the start of the war. The church has taken a path that I say that is different from my path. I don't go to Russian church any longer. It's my choice. Okay, I pray differently. But I just want to show you this so you understand that what's going on. In war, a person has a personal encounter with God, says a priest, Demian Shevtsov, in his previous life. And that's the official media of Russian Orthodox Church, by the way. So there's an article in this official newspaper on a website. I don't know if they run a newspaper, but at war, a person has encounter with God, personal encounter with God. Russian church is the newsmaker for sure. They've been making this splashing with news. Sanctifying nuclear missiles called Satana, the Satan. Telling that those fighters, Russian soldiers who die on the battlefield will go straight to heaven. Things like that. Yeah, I covered it in my previous reports. At war, a person has personal encounter with God. It's just one question. I wonder which God they have in mind. Mine is different. By the way, there will be many more news like that. And if you want to keep up with other breaking news from Russia, other news that matter, that are significant, I consider becoming patron of Inside Russia, because every single day I carefully select and post 9 news that I find important with my commentaries and analysis. and I'll keep you informed on everything you wanted to know about Russia but didn't know where to look. So considering become patrons, give it a try. I'm going to put the link down below in description and in the pinned comment. And if you sign up to become patron, you also help inside Russia. So thank you. The next news is it's sad. It's a tragedy, real tragedy. A tragic accident just happened hours ago, and it's still happening. The rescue operation is going on. It happened in the mountains of the Caucasus region in Kabardino-Balkaria, very south of Russia, not too far from Georgia. A chairlift at Elbrus skiing resort malfunctioned and the chair fell down. Or I should say chairs fell down. According to RIA Novosti, it's a Russian official media resource, the propaganda, the victims of the collapse of the structure of the chairlift on Elbrus were one local man, a woman from Dagestan, and a man from Moscow. They all were testers, said the local authorities. Testing, you know. The chairlift was supposed to be closed for maintenance from September 2nd to September 24th. Now, this is to September 12th, and it's right in the beginning, in the middle of the maintenance, right there at midpoint. The local authorities immediately announced that the victims were testers. And I want you to see the footage someone was filming today. You see people in the chairlifts, in the chairs on the chairlift. Multiple, that's basically full of people, and they're stuck up there. And the rescue operation is going on, and I guess that's what happened. A cable snapped, and chairs fell down. Now, as you see, there are people in every chair. Now, they were testing the chairlift. Right. Look at them other testers stuck with their skis on or whatever, snowboards or whatever. This is Russia's favorite trick, to announce maintenance and take money for it, and then to steal the money and skip on maintenance and announce that the maintenance was done. That's classic. Classic. In my 40 plus years in Russia, I've seen it so many times. Imagine that one of the testers from Moscow, a man came all the way from Moscow to this particular chairlift to test the system. Another woman from Dagestan, she came all the way from Dagestan. Yeah, I bet that system on paper was closed down for the maintenance, and then they were just taking cash for the tickets and sending people on top. For most likely to ski. I don't know, perhaps for something else, but excursions. And now there are victims. Well, with the lack of general financing, with the war going on, with the lack of maintenance personnel, with the great greed and love for money, there will be more victims of poor maintenance. Not just chairlifts, but generally of poor maintenance of things in Russia. The next piece of news comes from Russia's central bank. The key interest rate was cut today by 1% from 18 to 17%. Now, I will talk more on that this coming Wednesday in Russia's weekly economy review. It is a very important event, not only because it affects the economy, and it does, of course. It affects the banking system. It affects businesses and people in Russia in general. It gives us more understanding what's happening in the political fight behind the scenes, under the carpet. Those bulldogs fighting under the carpet. We don't really know what's going on, but we see them fight. Well, there's the war happening between the head of the central bank, Elvira Nabiulina, and the owner of Russia's military-industrial complex, Sergei Chemezov. To find out more on who's winning and what happens next in the economy, please return this Wednesday. You will like my economic review, I promise you. A little hint, 1% is not good. 1% cut is not good. But Nabiulina has two choices, really, the bad and the worst. So she is no winner. Please come back on Wednesday. I'll tell you more about that. The next piece of news is of mobilization. The system works now. Russians who are liable for military service have been banned from leaving the country based on marks in the electronic military register. Let me remind you what happened in 2022 in September. Vladimir Putin announced the mobilization, and at that minute, the exodus began. In Russia, at the time, there were no unified electronic register. So each agency, government agency, the KGB, the Border Patrol, the Tax Revenue Service, the mobilization centers, they all had different systems, their own system, internal systems, not connected to each other. So when a person was issued a summon at the border, they didn't know about that. And that allowed for millions of Russians escaping. One of them, myself, left on the 27th of September. I remember what was happening. I witnessed. That was the exodus. And the luck of Russian men was that there was no system. People at the Border Patrol didn't know what was going on with their mobilization status. Well, Putin since ordered to create such a unified system, and the first case was recorded when a citizen was not allowed to leave the country due to a ban had in the economic register of military register of need a sip of water. In the electronic register that registers all liable for mobilization men. This event occurred on September 11th at Moscow Sheremetyevo Airport, where border guards denied exit of Russia to 28-year-old man. On September 8th, he received an electronic summon to undergo to a medical examination at the closest mobilization center. A travel ban was issued immediately, and it was displayed in the electronic system. So men still decided to try to get out of Russia by flying to Turkey, to Antalya, and they didn't allow him. Just one question. What took him so long to try to get out of Russia? And that's just tens of millions of Russian men are sitting and waiting. And I know that personally. I made my choice. Well, I guess they made their own. And at this point, it's safe to say it's all set for another big mobilization now. But that's going to be a different kind of mobilization. It'll be a very effective one because of a set of laws and the technical means, such as this unified electronic registry they have created. So it's going to be a very deadly, dead-on effective mobilization. Okay, the last news, the big one that towers above all other news, perhaps one of the biggest news of, I was going to say summer, but it's not summer any longer, it's fall, one of the biggest news of the fall. But before I get to that, I would like to ask you a favor. Now, first of all, if you haven't liked this message, please do so. That helps a lot to spread this message. Another favor is please share this message in your social media accounts. Again, it helps a lot to spread the message. And please let me know what you think of this week's news selection. Below in the comments, pick 3 news you like the most. And I do not answer most of comments because there are so many, sometimes thousands of them, but I try to look through as many as I can. So most likely I will look at your answer. What you like the most, perhaps there's something you dislike, let me know. If you have nothing to say, just drop me a line saying, hey Konstantin, thank you so much. You're doing a great job. This is for the algorithm. Thank you, friends. I appreciate that very much. Now, the last news. As you might have already heard, Russian drones hit Poland. Well, they didn't attack Poland, but they penetrated airspace. And some say it's a penetration of Russian drones. Some say it's an invasion of Russian drones. During one of the latest Russian strikes on Ukraine in the night on September 10th, Russian drones invaded Polish airspace. 4 airports were simultaneously closed due to drones. That included both airports in the capital, in Warsaw. To eliminate the drones, planes of both of the Polish Air Force and other NATO countries were lifted into the air. The Polish Operational Command called the drones in the country's airspace an act of aggression that created a real threat to the safety of our citizens. And I think that the Polish command is absolutely right. Now, what do Russian officials view the accident, how they view it, and what does the propaganda say about that? At the end, I would like to tell you what I think is the real reason why Putin sent drones to Poland. First, let's start with how Russian propaganda and Russian officials talk about this. They don't say intrusion, they don't say aggression, they don't say attack, nothing like that. They simply call it accident with drones in Poland. There's a media storm, the media storm happening in the West right now, especially in Europe, in Poland. Obviously, Poland is the country affected. The Article 4 of NATO is invoked. The extensive negotiations among NATO members are taking place. You know, this whirlpool of news and actions and outrage. Well, both Russian officials and propaganda are trying to downplay the event. They don't call it the invasion, the intrusion, the aggression. They don't call it what really is. They call it an accident with the drones in Poland, as if it's something insignificant, not worthy of attention. Russian people, we told you, we mentioned it. Now move on. You know, you have plenty of free time because you don't have mobile internet. Hang out with your friends, drink vodka. You know, why do you care about the drones in Poland? It's all sad. That's all done, you know. Well, I'm a little exaggerating, well, a lot, but the idea is the same. I know that there are a lot of experts giving their takes on the intrusion, on the aggression, but most are missing one point. And first of all, that's out of the question, and I think everyone agrees on that. It wasn't an accident. It was a planned event. The pathways of the drones clearly show that. Okay. Now, there are 2 main theories why Russians sent the drones to Poland. First theory is very common. A lot of experts, it's their take. They say it is a testing exercise. Russia is merely testing NATO's integrity and ability to respond to threats. There was another accident that many have forgotten already 2 years ago. A missile flew from Ukrainian airspace to Poland, a few miles deep into Poland, and landed on a farm and killed a Polish farmer. I don't think it was an exercise back then. I think it was a mistake, but the Kremlin was in panic back then. I remember I was covering that accident. There were official statements immediately made saying it wasn't us. It was not, it's Ukrainian air defense was shooting down missiles. That's why it landed in Poland. And Poland, again, invoked Article 4, and all NATO countries got together. And obviously, they didn't strike back. They didn't answer that. It was not an aggression. And I believe that was a mistake. Okay, but it was a test to NATO. NATO back then was different, majorly due to different US administration. It was testing, albeit unintentional. Now the circumstances are very different. America has showed its intentions to back out of supporting the allies, or at least possibility of backing out, not supporting in case there's an armed conflict. And in general, situation is very not very clear among the members of NATO. Okay, there's less consensus within NATO right now, and America is the driving force of that, of course. So the Kremlin needs to know what the response would be. And a perfect size of the threat, not too big of a threat to be dangerous and to get some kind of an armed response, but not too small, so it's insignificant. Just right. And multiple drones too. Note that it wasn't just one, it was multiple drones. So the first theory is testing. It was testing, stress testing, I could even say. The second theory is not that common, but it's a theory, it's a viable theory, is that the Kremlin wants to seed fear inside the NATO countries to force them to beef up their own defenses, therefore to cut the military aid to Ukraine. And that would help Russia on the front lines to fight Ukrainian forces. The less arms Ukrainians have, obviously, the easier it is for the Russians. That theory also has one more proof. Okay, we cannot disregard this theory. The thing is, former President Dmitry Medvedev on September 6 visited the border near Finland and announced Russia changing its attitude towards Finland because Finland is now a threat to Russia. He announced the start of new military fortification construction. Well, obviously, that's going to scare the Finns. And they're going to start beefing up their own defense. Okay, their more attention will be focused domestically rather than keeping the eyes on Ukraine. Okay, even if it's a little bit of attention away from Ukraine, that helps. Combined for all countries, that's a big win for Russia. So that theory is fear planting. The first one is stress testing. The second is fear planting. But I think where most experts are wrong, perhaps all, is they choose only one reason for Russia's drone intrusion. One theory, and they stick to it. I personally think the Kremlin had both goals in mind, sending drones to Poland simultaneously. And there's the third goal that no one is talking about. It's been overlooked. And it's not on the surface. Vladimir Putin has been building up his image as the victor for the past 9 months. Appeased by the American president, proclaimed victory at the V-Day parade in Moscow, breaking free from the political isolation, inviting 27 world leaders into Moscow to hang out with him, to shake hands with him, to drink with him, to eat with him, to meet with him. Flying to Alaska, invited by the US president, and receiving royal treatment in the United States of America, the royal honors. Then going to China to the SCO summit as one of world leaders, okay? And the continuation is the drones. Intrusion to Poland, a NATO country. Don't forget, that's a NATO country. Small enough to provoke conflict, safe enough to, well, actually not to provoke the conflict, safe enough not to provoke the conflict, but big enough to show the crowd that stands on the other side, away from the West, in the East, in Africa. Look what we can do, and we get away with it. We send our drones to Poland. Hey, they are attack drones. They fly deep into Polish territory, a NATO country, and nothing happens. Why there's no response? Because NATO is afraid of mighty powerful Russia. With a mighty powerful president, Vladimir Putin. We show NATO, okay? They are acting like cowards. So stick with us. Talk to us. Don't talk to them. Look at them. Look what they're doing. Basically, this message to very few leaders, but it's a very addressed message, it's targeted message, I should say, is this. In NATO, they are talking the talk, but they're not walking the walk. Russia is the force. I think Putin had 3 goals of sending the drones into Poland, not just one. And he achieved success in every one of the goals. Another victory for Putin. Another tremendous week for him, unfortunately. Thank you for watching. Carthago delenda est.